After hanging up on Shion, I searched for Rika-chan's phone number on my school's contact list. There it is. My fingers trembled with urgency, and I failed multiple times to put in the simple 5-digit number.
圭一、こんな時間に電話？夜遅くは先方に失礼だからよしなさい。
今はそれどころじゃないんだよ!
I shouted angrily at my mother, listening to the dial tone. Pick up. Come on, pick up. The time was 11 p.m. It certainly wasn't early. It was essentially the middle of the night. Had Rika-chan already gone to bed? Her phone would be ringing constantly though, so would she get back up for me? Rika-chan didn't pick up. She didn't pick up. She didn't pick up. Maybe she just happened to miss it. Maybe her bed was just too far away from the phone. The sound of a phone ringing gets clearer and clearer the longer you go on sleeping. Then, the bathroom? Yeah, she must be taking a bath. If that was the case, then even if she heard the phone, she wouldn't be able to pick up. It was a little late to be taking a bath, but it was possible she normally took baths right before going to bed. I'll wait 30 minutes, then try calling again. Keiichi. Even as I was thinking that, I called her house over and over again. I kept calling, over and over again and again. I kept on calling her, but she didn't pick up even once. I think I kept trying for about 30 minutes. Yet she wasn't picking up. Were my phone calls so persistent that she had gotten scared of picking up the receiver? No, that couldn't possibly be it. There was no point in doing this any longer. The best thing to do would be to go there in person. Where was Rika-chan's house, though? Shit, I've never even asked her where she lived. Her residence was written there on the contact list, but it was an address with mostly numbers, so I couldn't tell where it was just by reading it. Isn't there a map or something in here? Rika Furude. Her last name was Furude. It was a bit of an odd last name, so it might be easy to find. Thinking that, I rummaged around the drawer with the phone book, but could only find things like takeout menus and phone numbers for public establishments. Shit. I tore one thing after another out of the drawer, but I didn't come up with any clues as to where Rika-chan's house was. Calm down, Keiichi. If you don't know, then just ask. That's someone who does know.
そうだ! Rena なら知ってるに違いない!
I looked up Rena's phone number on the contact list. Rena Ryugu. There she was.
Moshi. Ryugu desu.
It was the voice of a grumpy-sounding man. It must have been Rena's father. I'm calling in the middle of the night. I need to be polite.
夜分遅くに申し訳ありません。前原と申しますが、レナさんはいらっしゃいますか？
レイナは風呂に入っていますが。あ、出たかな。レイナ、友達から電話だぞ。
Wait a minute. Reina. But I thought only an outsider would call her Reina. Alright, Reina Ryugu was her real name, wasn't it? I'd gotten so used to calling her Rena that hearing her real name caught me off guard.
もしもし、お電話変わりました。
I love how she sounds like she's on the phone, but the other guy sounded clear as fuck, like he's in the same room as us.
俺だよ、ケイジだ。夜遅くにすまん。
あれ？ケイチ君？こんな時間に何かな？
実はリカちゃんの家がどこにあるのか知りたいんだ。
Rena seemed a little appalled that I'd call her for something like that at this hour. However, she spoke her next words seriously, as if she caught on to how urgent my need was.
いいよ。 フルデ神社の境内に集会所があるよね。その裏手に2階建ての倉庫小屋があるのを知ってるかな。そこに住んでるんだよ。
I couldn't immediately visualize the place, but as long as I knew she lived on the shrine grounds, I'd just have to take a look around.
わかった。ありがとう。こんな遅くにすまなかったな。親父さんに謝っといてくれ。
そんなのはいいよ、圭一くん。それより、どうしてリカちゃんの家を聞くのかな。
Rena asked in an unusually sharp way, halting me before I could hang up the phone. I hesitated for a moment, about whether to tell her. He was killed because I told him.
圭一くん、聞こえてるなら答えてほしいな。どうしてリカちゃんの家の場所をこんな時間に聞きたいのかな。
Rena affected her usual tone, but beneath her words lay a certain tension, like she'd intuitively sensed something was going on. What will you do, Keiji? If it's Rena, can't I tell her? He was killed because he found out. I revealed everything. So he was killed.
圭一くん、レナは真剣に聞いてるんだけどな。答えてほしいよ。
Rena asked me once again in a tone so forceful I couldn't imagine her even using it normally. I was taken aback by her vigor. Rena was Rika-chan's friend too. She had the right to be concerned about Rika-chan disappearing. If I told Rena, then, even if only for a moment, I could drive away my horrifying fears.
レナ、理由を聞かれると困るんだが。
うん。
Rena's tone was seriousness itself. Just from that tone, I could feel her saying, "No matter what you say, I'll believe you." That subtle sense of security gave me the courage to reveal the truth.
リカちゃんが危ない気がするんだ。
それは虫の知らせかな。それともリカちゃんに危険が迫っている何か確信がある？
I really didn't have time to go back and forth with Rena about this. Still, I think listening to her calm voice soothed my pointless impatience.
確信はないけど。
Yet I still hesitated. I had told Rika-chan that we had snuck into the ritual storehouse. The mayor to whom Shion had confessed before that had already disappeared. So it was possible that Rika-chan also didn't know how to explain it to Rena. While I was tongue-tied, Rena spoke up.
変なこと聞いてごめんね。考えたら確信なんか必要なかった。
Rena laughed a little, seeming a bit absent-minded. I wasn't exactly in the mood to laugh, so this time I was dumbfounded. Rena continued in a cheerful yet purposeful voice.
友達のことが心配になって、それを確かめるのに理由なんかいらないと思う。仮にリカちゃんが寝てて、それを起こしてしまったとしても、それが理由なら私たちは誰も怒らないと思うよ。
Rena, thank you.
じゃあまずは圭一君に確認するね。リカちゃんの家に電話はしたんだよね。それでどうしても繋がらないから家の場所を聞いてきたんだね。
ああ。10分以上は鳴らし続けたと思う。ひょっとしたら気づかなくて寝てるだけなのかも。
リカちゃんの家はとても狭いの。だから電話が鳴ったらたとえ寝ていても気づかないわけはないよ。さとこちゃんもいるんだから2人揃って気づかないわけはない。
さとこってリカちゃんと一緒に住んでるのか？
うん、知らなかったの？今はその話は後ね。とにかく電話をそれだけ鳴らして誰も出ないのは絶対におかしいよ。
Rena understood that the situation wasn't normal far faster than I could have ever imagined her to. It made her seem dependable. However, the fact that Rena had acknowledged this also meant that the best case possibility of it all just being the result of my own needless fears went out the window.
私も 今からすぐにリカちゃんの家に行くね。一緒に行く？なら迎えに行くよ。
わかった。じゃあいつもの待ち合わせ場所で合流しよう。待ってるぞ。私、ケイチくんの家に迎えに行くから。だからお家で待ってていいよ。それからご家族に私と一緒にリカちゃんの家に行ってくるって伝えておいてね。
は？
うちでいいのか？時間のロスのような。
あと、みーちゃんには電話した？みーちゃんはこういう時すっごく頼もしいの。まだなら私から電話しておくね。
My thoughts froze for a moment. Shion had just told me to be careful around Mion during our phone conversation a little while ago. The Sonozaki main house was somehow lurking behind the surface of the unusual freak deaths. And their current heir to the family, Mion, wouldn't be uninvolved. So wouldn't that mean she wasn't uninvolved in what happened this year to Takano-san and Tomitaka-san, and also the mayor's disappearance?
じゃあね。すぐに行くからね。待っててね。
Okay, bye. My god. That's all Irena said before that's all Irena said before hurriedly hanging up. Now wasn't the time to be doubting Mion. I need to make sure Rika-chan was safe. I got changed and grabbed the key to my bike. I figured things would go more smoothly if we met up in the place we usually do before school. Oh no, Keiichi. Then I wouldn't need to come all the way to my house. Oh, Keiichi, what are you doing? My parents would probably have objected if I told them I was leaving, so I creeped out without a word. The night was unusually warm and disagreeably humid. Ugh. Keiichi, what are you doing? She said that Rika-chan and Sadako lived together, right? Then it wasn't only Rika-chan. Sadako wasn't there either. Or Sadako wasn't there either. Realizing what them living together really meant caused my thoughts to immediately take a turn for the worse. That can't be. Sadako is... She's got nothing to do with any of this. Even if there were a reason for Rika-chan to disappear, there shouldn't be one for Sadako. That's crazy. Rena was really fast. She approached me on her bike at an amazing speed. Her breath was ragged, painting a clear picture of just how hurriedly she'd been going.
Oh, Rena! さあ、行こうぜ!
ケイチくん。
Oh, she's mad.
私、お家で待っててって言ったはずだよ。
Rena's expression was all business. Was she mad? It came out of the blue and I faltered for a moment.
いや、ここで合流した方が早く出発できると思ってさ。
ケイチくんは本当に分かってるの？
Rena shouted, clearly angry. I'd never seen Rena like this before.
分かってるのかって、何がだよ。
Rena seemed to notice she was scaring me, took a couple of deep breaths, then continued as if admonishing me, but her expression didn't soften at all.
ケイチくん、昨日村長さんがいなくなって村中で大騒ぎになったよね。
ああ。
そんな中で、ケイチくんはリカちゃんとサトコちゃんがいなくなったって言ってるんだよ。
ああ。そういうことになるな。
じゃあ、もっと用心しなくちゃダメだよ。こんな夜中にたった一人でこんなところで突っ立ってるなんて不用心にも程があるんだから。
I began to understand where Rena's anger was coming from.
ご家族にはちゃんと私とリカちゃんの家に行くって伝えたよね。万が一、私とケイチくんが揃って失踪しちゃうようなことがあっても、いつどの辺でいなくなったのかを残すことができる。
Rena was perfectly level-headed in this emergency situation. Ever since the night of the Watanagashi, every night someone had died or disappeared. On the night itself, Takano-san and Tomitaka-san met strange ends. On the next night, the elder vanished. Now, on the next night after that, Rika-chan and Satoko were nowhere to be found. I hadn't been thinking of anyone but myself, but it wasn't enough to say that Hinamizawa was a little weird at the moment. It was, in fact, extremely strange. Rena had even anticipated our own disappearances, and had told me to tell my family where I was going. I was embarrassed at my own carelessness, and the need to be embarrassed made me afraid of the night.
ごめん、まだ言ってなかった。
じゃあ一緒に言いに行こう。
With Rena beside me, I wheeled back towards my house. Oh. The moon seemed strangely high in the sky. This is a very interesting picture. Because I'm pretty sure, yeah, this is obviously photoshopped, right? It's just some digital art from 2002 that some dude made. But it's still pretty interesting. Anyway, let's look at the console background. Looks really nice. That moon is really, really pretty. Look back to the original backgrounds. A sky that was uselessly vast and cold, so that no matter what, it would never seem to me like a dream. This cruel fact had already confronted me. On such a crazy night, Rena had been unimaginably dependable. Hinamizawa's metamorphosis, enough to make Rena's caution against me, enough to make Rena caution me against carelessness, was, to me, the most fearsome thing of all. The moon seemed strangely high in the sky. We met up with Mion on the way, and she, of course, was unsure whether to believe me about Rika-chan and Sadako-chan's disappearance.
ケイちゃん、本気で言ってんの？もし冗談だったらかなり怒るよ。
Mion was clearly displeased. If this were a joke, it wasn't very funny. I understood how indiscreet my words were. Ever since the day before yesterday, someone had either died or vanished every night. Rika-chan and Sadako disappearing after all that was something you just couldn't say, even in jest.
みーちゃん、本当に冗談だったなら怒るんじゃなく笑おうよ。だって冗談なんだから。私たちはそれが冗談であることを確かめなくちゃいけない。
そうだね。機嫌の悪そうなことを言ってごめん。
However indiscreet a joke it may have been, if we learned that our friends were safe, it would end up as nothing more than a funny story. Having been warned about that by Rena, Mion gave a dry smile, the tension she felt loosening a bit. She mounted her bicycle as well. Our 3 bicycles' lights flashed down the pitch-black roads. They were some of the only illumination outside.
ケイちゃんはなぜ急にこんな時間にリカちゃんの家に電話なんかする気になったわけ？
Mion asked me the same thing that I had trouble explaining to Rena.
虫が知らせた。じゃあ、おかしいか。
I couldn't quite tell because it was dark, but I thought I could see Mion smiling very ambiguously. I definitely understood that she wasn't convinced, though, despite the darkness.
俺さ、うたた寝してる時に悪い夢を見ると、どうしても気になっちゃうんだよ。
ケイチ君はそれでリカちゃんがさらわれる夢を見たわけかな。
いや、もっと漠然とした予感みたいなものだよ。
Keiichi, you need to learn to lie a little better, man.
リカちゃんが電話に出てくれたなら、レナやミオにも続けて電話するつもりだったよ。
Lies smoothly blabbed out of my mouth, makeshift though they were. Ugh. I was lying because I had thought telling them I was connected to Shion would be like silently admitting we'd stolen into the ritual house together. ritual storehouse together that night. Mion didn't press me any further. I don't know whether, shit, I can't read tonight. I don't know whether that convinced her. Or maybe she figured that making sure Rika-chan and Satoko were safe would be faster than making an issue of it. Holy fuck. I felt relieved and immediately a little guilty. Mion hadn't really been acting any differently these last few days, but I'm still trying to distance myself from her for some reason. It was only because of what I heard from Shion and Oishi-san that she was the successor to some kind of super extravagant gang family. No. Was I just trying to force myself to forget? Don't do that, Keiichi. Wasn't it Mion who was the first to ask about the night of Watanagashi? In such a harsh tone at that. Have I already forgotten the terror I felt? At the time, Mion looked like someone different from the Mion I knew. When I think about that, Mion, and Shion and Oishi-san's descriptions of Mion made a tiny bit more sense. That's it, isn't it? If it wasn't for how she acted that day, then I wouldn't be feeling this way towards her now. What on earth was going on with her back then? I was conveniently thinking of only of everything she had done after that, while disregarding the very first thing, the thing I should have been looking at most, wasn't I? Mion was pedaling her bicycle in front of me, her long hair fluttering in the wind. No matter how long I looked at her back, it never gave me answers to any of my questions. We went all the way to the store leading up to the shrine grounds. Of course, we weren't going to want or haul our bikes up there, so we parked them beside the staircase instead.
フルデ神社か。
みんな公園みたいな感覚で勝手に出入りしてるけど、本当はここは古出家の立派な私有地なんだよ。
So the entire shrine is private property. It really makes you feel the passage of time. 10 or 20 years ago, it would have looked exactly the same.
だとすると、フルデ家って結構な旧家なんじゃないのか？代々続いた由緒ある。
うん。ない。おかしいよ。
Irina said something clearly disquieting, so I ran over to her.
どうしたレナ？
リカちゃんとサトコちゃんはいつもここに自転車を止めてるはずなの。ほら、どこにもない。
I took a look around. Indeed, there were no other bicycles aside from the ones we'd taken to get here.
他の場所に止めてる可能性もあるんじゃない？例えば、担いで石段を上がったとか。
女の子には無理だよ、ケイイチくん。
Just as she said, I couldn't imagine Rika-chan and Satoko lugging their bikes all the way up there. We hadn't yet knocked on Rika-chan's door, but reality was already sparking some ideas that weren't what you'd call good. Maybe they were just parked under some trees and we hadn't noticed them. I refused to believe that not being able to find their bikes here was proof that they disappeared.
行こうぜ。家に行った方がはるかに確実だろう。
We all nodded and dashed up the stone steps. We passed through the red arch and came out onto the shrine grounds, which was covered in neat gravel. It was so quiet here, as though the Watanagashi festival had never happened.
で、リカちゃんたちが住んでいる家ってのはどこにあるんだ？
こっち。ついてきて。
Rena took the lead and sprinted off. Oh, so here's where they live, in this place. Rena took the lead and sprinted off. We went towards the assembly hall behind the shrine, then looped around a bit, around behind it. Oh, here. In the darkness of the night, we found a small prefab 2-story shack that looked like a warehouse. Interesting. And now if we look at it with the console backgrounds. Hmm.
明かり消えてるね。寝てるんじゃない？
ノックしてみよう。
Look. Rena and Mion neared the shack, which didn't really look like a place people would live in. They had such a beautiful shrine, so I figured they'd live in an equally beautiful house. It was far from what I had expected.
リカちゃん、さとこちゃん、いる？
Rena shouted up towards the second floor. Her voice was restrained at first, but it steadily grew louder. No answer. In fact, there wasn't any sort of activity in the house at all.
寝てるのかもしれない。起こしてみよう。
Mion banged on the shutter with both hands, and the loud sounds echoed into our surroundings. They would have to notice this much noise. They would have to turn on the lights in their room, fling open the windows, and yell, "What do you think it is? What time do you think it is?" That, however, wasn't happening. There was absolutely no response. Mion stopped slamming her fist on the shutter, and a sudden silence fell over us. The silence aroused terrible thoughts in us. I could feel the blood draining from my face.
鍵かかってる。どこかから中に入れないかな。
Rena showed no signs of stopping. It didn't look like she would admit they weren't here until we went inside and saw for ourselves. That refusal to give in gave me strength.
2階の窓とか、鍵をかけ忘れてないかな。俺、ちょっと試してみる。
How are you gonna
ケ
get
イ
up
ちゃ
there?
ん、はしご。
Ah. How are you gonna get up there? Here's a ladder. Okay. Mion brought over a ladder that was standing against the house. The footing was a little unstable for me to climb it, but Mion held the ladder firmly in place for me. I hadn't climbed too many ladders. My inexperience with them exposed, I climbed up one step at a time and tried to open each window on the second floor. Yeah, I don't blame you, Keiichi. I haven't climbed many ladders myself personally. And it's quite something.
みーちゃん、
When you have
私
to.
念のため本宅の方も見てくるね。
At least like super tall ones.
すぐ戻るから。
Rena darted away. Wait, what? A main house?
古出家の本当の家だよ。両親が亡くなって以来、ずっと放置してあるそうだけど。
あ、そうか。リカちゃんのご両親って亡くなってるんだよな。
At that point, I recalled something else. Wasn't Satoko living here too?
さとこも親なしだよ。親代様のたたりってことで、両親が崖から落っこちてね。
That's
お
something we
兄
know.
さんだったサトシくんもいなくなっちゃって。
サトシって前に聞いた名前だな。
I remembered. He was the one who disappeared last year because of the curse.
それ以来、サトコはリカちゃんと一緒にこの小屋で暮らしてるんだよ。互いに身寄りのない一人ぼっち同士。助け合ってね。
本宅って言ったか？そっちで暮らした方が楽だろうに。
The curtains were drawn, so I couldn't get a good look inside to see, but two young girls living together seemed like a pretty tough life.
初めはそうしてたみたい。でも、両親を思い出すから辛いって言って。
I had no idea. I feel really bad for them. They were normally so cheerful at school that I never even realized an atom of this.
リカちゃんもサトコも大変なんだな。
呪われてるんだよ。
え？
Suddenly, Mion said something in such a low voice that it sounded like she was really cursing someone, and I didn't let it slide. I turned around on the ladder to face her and asked again.
ミオン、お前、今、なんて言った？
呪われてるって言ったの。
Mion, still holding onto the ladder, brought her head up to look at me in the eyes. As soon as our eyes met, an absolute zero jolt of electricity surged through my body. Oh my god, these eyes again. Mion's eyes clouded over, and within them boiled and bubbled a stew of chaos. They whirled around and around like a raging sea, and bubbles floated to the surface. I had at some point been trapped on this ladder, like being cornered on a dead-end street.
ミオン、お前、なんて顔してんだよ。
I intended to follow that up with, "You're going too far with this joke," and give her a forced smile, but... However, on such an uneven footing as I was, the only thing that came out of my mouth was a hoarse groan as I desperately struggled to not let nausea overwhelm me.
北条聡子はね、お社様のたたりを一身に受けた呪われた子なの。
Mion answers with a response to something I never asked, as if replying to somebody else's question.
公園の展望台から転落死したのは両親だけ。あの子をミソッカス扱いしてた冷たい両親だけが死んで、あの子は一人だけ助かった。引き取り先であの子をいじめたおばは、Watanagashiの夜に異常者に脳みそがぐっちゃぐちゃに飛び散って頭が原形をとどめないくらいにめった打ちにされて殺された。いつもあの子をかばってたサトシ君もあの子の誕生日に突然消えてしまった。あの子をいじめていなかったのに消されてしまった。
I don't know if this is CG, but let's check the background if it's different. It is different by a bit. Someone made him disappear even though he wasn't abusing her.
警察は家出したんだって決めつけたけど、サトシ君は逃げ出すような人じゃなかった。いつも一生懸命、誰の力も借りずにコツコツと一人懸命に努力する人だった。たった一人の妹のために身を粉にして頑張ってたのに消されてしまった。あの子のためにだけに生きていたのに消されてしまった。かわいそうなサトシ君、なんて報われないサトシ君、なんて恩知らずなあの子なの。あの子は呪われた子。あの子に近づけばそれが誰でも末路は同じ。たたりで死ぬかたたりで消えるか。あの子に安らぎなんてあるものか。あの子に安らぎなんてあるものか。リカちゃんが消えたのもきっとサトコのせいだよ。違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない違いない。
Mion was mumbling words over and over that were no longer coherent. Her shoulders were trembling so hard that I could feel it through the ladder. I almost lost my footing, which made me realize just how far away the ground really was.
落ち着けよ、ミオン。何のことを言ってるのかわからないよ。
I wasn't sure if she even heard me. Mion rocked back and forth, and that rocking and trembling was becoming even more violent. Help me. The ladder, it's falling. Help me, help. Just then I heard the sound of many people running towards us.
おい！ここだ！
I very nearly said help me outright. 4 or 5 adults led by Rena ran over here with flashlights.
ケイチくん、みーちゃん、遅れてごめんね。鍵借りてきたよ。
お、助かったね。どうも窓も戸締まりは完璧らしくてね。困ってた。
When I heard Mion talking like nothing had just happened, I again felt a chill run through me. The person currently holding the ladder in place, it was definitely Mion. It was the real Mion Sonozuki. Then, the person muttering to themselves just a few seconds ago, who was that? The person who was mumbling about terrible things like curses, who was that? I jumped down from the ladder as if running away before Mion turned into that person that wasn't Mion a second time. The adults tried a few different keys on a key ring as they try to open the big shutter on the first floor.
リカちゃんの家はね、もともとは町会の防災倉庫だったの。だからシャッターの鍵を今でも村長さんの家が預かってるの。
今ではリカちゃんとサトコの指定だけど、まあもともとリカちゃんの家の敷地内だし、誰も文句は言わないけどね。
Mion gave me a smile as she said that. I, however, could only return her gaze with an aghast expression. Mion was acting all too normal now, but that only contrasted all the more sharply with her earlier un-Mion-like creepiness. The shutter opened for the first time in a very long while. Rena located the light switch and wasted no time going inside. I followed her in.
リカちゃん、サトコちゃん、いるなら返事をして。
We climbed a narrow staircase. It had looked like nothing more than a warehouse, but now that I was inside, I could feel how lived in it was. It was a person's home. Somehow the scent of the two of them filled the place. This was definitely where Rika-chan and Satoko lived. The first floor doubled as a town assembly warehouse, but the second floor was a space entirely for living. And then here we have that. And now the console backgrounds. Just like a one-room apartment, past the kitchen was a living room taking up about 150 square feet. Dressers, cupboards, and the like were packed into the space, and in the corner there was a huge pile of clothes that appeared to have just been taken in from drying outside. In the center of the living room was a folded-up table, and on it were small containers of things, or for things like soy sauce and salad dressing. The sense of a frugal lifestyle drifted from all of it. It was strange that they weren't here in the middle of the night like this. The adults, climbing the stairs one at a time, began to make a fuss and talk amongst themselves.
どう？やっぱりいない？
いない。絶対おかしい。
The village had just been thrown into chaos yesterday because of the mayor's disappearance. Then today, even the Rika-chan and Satoko had... Were they out playing somewhere together? That can't be. Their bicycles aren't here, though. Where would they have gone so late at night? Have they just not come back? Yet? Where did they go? The adults put forth various possibilities, and the house immediately devolved into a state of confusion. Eventually, Mion settled them down.
信じたくないけど、君吉の村長さんが消えたのが昨日の今日。無関係とは言い切れないね。
The adults' faces paled at Mion's declaration. Mai and Rena's did as well.
例えば、ご近所に行ってお茶でもごちそうになって眠っちゃって、
Accidentally, huh?
起こすに起こせなくなってるなんて可能性ももちろんあるよね。その可能性をまず潰そう。牧野さんは裏手から沢のあたりの家を回ってください。慶太郎さんはおじゃが池の方。岡村さんは。
Mion promptly gave directions to the villagers. The adults followed them without hesitation despite her age.
私はここに残って、電話で片っ端から心当たりに問い合わせてみます。じゃあ皆さん、そういうことで。
Got it. The adults all roared in reply and pounded back down the stairs below.
さすがみーちゃんだね。みーちゃんは学校だけじゃなく、ひなみ沢の委員長さんみたいだよね。
茶化さない茶化さない。ほらどいて。おじさんは電話を使うんだから。
Mion grinned proudly, took the receiver and got started. Then I gave Mion a trusting look, considering her dependable for doing all of this. My feelings, though, were a little more complicated, since her leadership seemed to be affirming the Sonozaki family's successor impression that Shion and Oishi-san had given me. Stop right there, Keiichi. None of that matters right now. The most important thing is to make sure Rika-chan and Sadako are safe. Let's see. Couldn't there be a clue hinting at where they might have gone somewhere in this room?
とはいえ、そんなのわかるはずもないよな。
If we tore the whole place apart and figured out what was different from before, we might be able to speculate, but there was nothing strange about this room, and there were no clues in sight. In the first place, I had never been here before. There was no way for me to know what was different if I didn't know how the room usually looked. Hey, don't give up, Keiji. Stop thinking and start looking. For something. In search of something, I tried pulling open the dresser drawers and open the windows. It didn't uncover anything meaningful, though. And then also unable to stand around doing nothing was looking around the room like I was.
でもレナ、冷蔵庫や流しの下の棚とかを開いても、リカちゃんは見つからないと思うぞ。
隠れてるかなって思って。
As we were searching, I got noisy outside. Villagers were quickly assembling here, having heard the commotion. Of course, a lot of them were probably people Mion had called.
私、みんなに話をしてくる。遅かれ、警察も来るだろうしね。大石のやつにも事情を説明しなきゃ。
Mion began descending the stairs, and we followed her out to the front of the house. There were already around 10 adults here, and all of them looked uneasy. I suddenly noticed that the old people from the shrine were here as well, and they were praying for Rika-chan's safety, rubbing their prayer beads. This had gotten bad. This wasn't just a problem between friends anymore.
ミオンちゃん、リカちゃんとサトコちゃんがいなくなったってのは本当かい？
The villagers all formed a ring around Mion, swarming her. Mion raised her right hand as if silently telling them to calm down.
誰かの家にお邪魔していないか、町会の回覧区分に沿って全戸をまず調べよう。本人たちがこっちの気も知らずに、誰かの家ですやすやとお泊まりしてる可能性もあるわけだからね。
It would definitely be hard for someone to wake up Rika-chan if she had eaten a good full meal and fallen asleep like a kitten afterwards. Oh, how nice it would be if that were the case.
こんなことは考えたくないけど、もちろん悪いことが起こった可能性もある。
Mion's face grew remarkably more grim, and a wave of silence washed over the adults.
我々も手分けしよう。昨夜の村長探しで回ったところをもう一度回る。
俺たちはダム現場をよく念入りに探してみる。お前さんたちは学校のあたりを探してみてくれ。
どうしたらはよ回らんと。行こう行こ
う。みんな昨日も村長さん探しで徹夜だったからね。寝不足で辛いだろうけど、どうかよろしく。
With that as their signal, the adults scattered in every direction. I figured I should scatter somewhere as well, so I started walking unsteadily in a direction no one else had gone in. I was getting farther and further away from people. I didn't feel scared or anything though. If someone were made to disappear, Shion and I should be first. It would have been perfectly normal for me to be scared of the dark. However, I didn't feel that way. Why was that? It was because tonight, someone had already disappeared, so nobody else would disappear tonight. It would take some time before I, exhausted as I was, would feel guilt at the cause of my own selfish sense of relief. Oh boy. Suddenly, my vision cleared and a cold wind caressed my body. This was the hill from which you could see the whole village. Looking down from this hill, I could see lights on here and there, and I knew that the entire village had awoken from its slumber. First Takano-san and Tomitake-san, then the mayor, and now even Rika-chan and Sadoko had been sacrificed. Word of it was spreading everywhere. The strength in my knees left me. This could no longer be a joke. We could have found them. Mion would have told me I was a worrywart, Rena would just be glad we did, and they would have smiled at me. My hopes disappeared as if I was awakening from a dream. That was what the view I could see was telling me. Following my knees, my arms both bent forward onto the ground, and I clawed at it with my nails. I couldn't figure out if I was feeling sorrow or frustration.
俺のせいなのか。
I couldn't endure the burden of my own sin, and I had just told Rika-chan about it. They had nothing to do with it, but Rika-chan and even Satoko had been sacrificed. It was like a cross that Shion and I would each have to bear the weight of until we ourselves were erased. Well, if I'm going that far, then the problem started long before that. My original sin of breaking taboo and entering the ritual storehouse without asking. I knew I shouldn't have gone in there from the start. Yet I lost out to cheap curiosity. I felt so angry at myself until this very moment. There was a crunching sound. I wasn't even interested in who made the noise, despondent as I was.
ケイチくん大丈夫？
It was Rena. Perhaps my clawing at the ground made it look as though I was having stomach pains. She ran over and rubbed my back to make me feel better.
俺が全部悪いんだ。俺のせいで。
ケイチくんが？何も悪いわけはないよ。自分をどうか責めないでね。
I could tell Rena was doing her best to choose the right words out of consideration for me. That's why I could sense her intent behind those words. Keiichi-kun, you know why Rika-chan and Satoko-chan disappeared, don't you? Is what she really meant to say? Because it was an emergency, Rena had ignored the reason why I wanted to make sure Rika-chan was safe, but now that we'd actually confirmed her disappearance, it was only natural Rena would start to wonder about why. However, with the situation having gone this far, I couldn't possibly tell her now. I didn't want to admit that Rika-chan and Satoko had disappeared, but I couldn't let Rena disappear either.
ケイチくん、こんな風通しのいいところにずっといたら風邪ひいちゃう。
Rena sat down, bringing her eyes level with mine.
子供たちはね、もう解散して家で寝ろって。
Rena showed me her watch as she said that. It was long past 1 in the morning. Time was passing too quickly. Had I been crawling at the ground here for that long?
もう寝ないと明日の学校に差し支えるよ。大人たちだって昨べも一晩中村長さんを探したからみんなクタクタ。今夜は少し早めに解散するって。
I was a little upset that they weren't allotting as much time to this as they had to search for the mayor last night, but that was something I, the cause of everything, had no right to criticize them for.
大丈夫。さっきね、警察の人も来たの。今、どんどん街から応援のパトカーが来てるよ。
Interesting, they use patokaru, as short for like patrol car. Hearing that remark, I looked down at the village to see, that there were indeed more cars than one would normally expect at this hour, coming from the darkness on the other side of the mountain. And this is probably like the same image that we just had as a background, but let's check anyways. It is. However, none of their emergency lights were on. Of course, their sirens weren't wailing either. That's right. All of the incidents that occurred right after the Watanagashi were seen as the product of Oyashiro-sama's curse, and would be handled in secrecy. Rika-chan and Satoko too, their disappearance would end up exactly like the other serial incidents in the past. Surreptitious. Unresolved. Declared a mystery, and disappeared from memory. Rika-chan's face, her sweet face like a Western doll's, would fade away. Satoko's smile, Her energetic, fanged smile would fade away. The more I try to remember them, the less I would be able to. I deserved to be called an idiot dozens of times over, and it wouldn't be enough. I couldn't hold back the tears at my own sheer stupidity.
圭一君が何を自分に責めているかわからないけれど、もうやめよう。
I wasn't about to deny it, but I couldn't. Even so, I couldn't affirm it either. I wanted to at least keep Rena out of this. If she found out, she would become involved.
頼む、レナ。放っておいてくれないか。俺、きっと、家に帰ったって眠れない。
If I couldn't get to sleep, then I at least wanted to search for Rika-chan and Sadako until I collapsed. The entire village was looking, and yet they still hadn't been found. I don't think I'd be able to find them if I went looking alone at this point. Still, I had to do it.
俺のせいで消えてしまったんだ。他の探してくれてる人たちよりも先になんか眠れるものか。
I had said that to myself in self-deprecation, but I soon realized that Rena was silently trying to find the meaning in my mumblings. I realized I had misspoke.
圭一君のせいなの？どうしてそう思うのかな？
That can't be. Keiichi-kun, you're not at fault. I was happy that Rena said these things to me, but she only did so because she didn't know the truth. If she knew that everything had been caused by my breaking taboo, on the night of the Watanagashi, then even Rena would curse my existence. However, I can't even allow for those curses. That would mean confessing my own crimes to Rena. If I spilled even one word of having snuck into the ritual storehouse on the night of the Watanagashi, then even Rena could disappear tomorrow night. The gentle, spirited, always joking, always hauing. But at a time like this, the most dependable person in the world, Rena, might disappear. I don't want that. Anything but that. This time I need to bear my own cross. Alone.
圭一君がとても仲間思いだって知ってるから。自分を傷つけたくなる気持ちもよくわかるよ。だけど、レナは圭一君のせいじゃないって知ってる。圭一君が悪くないって知ってるから。
知ってるって。
The shivering in my veins rushed up my back and replaced the sorrow in my heart with fear. I didn't tell her anything, did I? Maybe I accidentally said something that caused Rena to figure it out. This is bad. Now Rena will disappear. Rena will disappear. Rena will disappear. Then Rena, the same way I always did, grabbed my head and began to pet it roughly.
圭一君、ひょっとしてレナも消えちゃうかもしれないって思ってるのかな。お社様のたたりで。
She puts more force into the hand rubbing my head.
だったら安心して。レナは消えたりしないよ。絶対に。
どうして消えないなんて自信を持って言えるんだよ。
I mean, someone's been sacrificed every night so far. There was no proof that it wouldn't happen again tomorrow night. There was even less proof, after all, that the sacrifice wouldn't be Rena. I don't care who you are. Just please, if you're going to erase someone, erase me first. Please, stop cruelly getting rid of people we're close to, like the mayor for Shion and Rika-chan and Sadako for me. Shion's hysterical shouting came back to mind. They must be planning to kill us last of all. They're not killing the first people who come to mind. They start by killing those we're close to, and then after they've caused us so much pain, they'll kill us. That must be what they're doing.
レナ。
Please, don't disappear. Please, don't. As long as I'm still here. I could no longer conceal the sobs welling up within me.
ほら、 圭一くんに涙なんか似合わないよ。みんなのところに行こう。婦人会の人たちがね、お味噌汁の炊き出しをしてくれてるの。飲むと温まって落ち着くよ。
And it prompted me to stand. I didn't have the energy to oppose her, so I stood as she urged me to. God. We returned to the shrine grounds to find several gas stoves there with miso soup in big pots. The many villagers there sipped at the soup they were given in dead, stony silence. Their expressions were absolutely exhausted. Everyone had just been running around the village until a little while ago. From the dreary looks on their faces, though, I assumed they hadn't come up with anything yet.
ケイちゃん、どこ行ってたんだよ。ケイちゃんまでいなくなったのかと心配したよ。
すまん。
Mion held out some miso soup for me, but I refused the offer. I didn't have much of an appetite.
みーちゃん、どう？何か手がかりはあった？
Mion took a sip of her soup, her expression frank.
全然ない。学校が終わってから家に帰って、二人で自転車に乗ってどこかに行ったらしい。しかも、二人が自転車に乗った姿は全く目撃されていないし。
When it gets dark out in Hinamizawa, people quickly vanish from the streets. Aside from adults hurrying back home from a town in cars or bicycles, it was normal to see absolutely nobody walking around outside. It wasn't at all strange that nobody had seen Rika-chan and Satoko riding their bikes.
昨日の村長の時と同じ。お手上げだよ。
Mion's apathetic tone pricked my nerves, but that anger quickly subsided. She had been doing all sorts of things to try to find Rika-chan until just a second ago. If I asked her, she'd probably say that she was up all night last night too. Looking for the mayor, wouldn't she? She must have been far more fatigued than I was. Besides, what about me? I'd spent the time hunched over in indecision all alone. I had no right to say anything about Mion.
ケイちゃんも辛いだろうけど今夜はこれで休もう。さっき今夜は解散しようってなったところだよ。これを飲んだらもう終わりにしよう。
終わりなのか？
あ、もちろん終わりじゃないよ。明るくなったら警察も増援を入れて徹底的に探すってさ。沖宮の方に行ってる可能性もあるからね。村長の件も含めて鹿骨市全体で目撃情報がないか洗うって言ってる。それよりもケイちゃんだよ。どこに行ってたんだい？いつの間にかいなくなっちゃうから心配したんだよ。
Suddenly, I was on the receiving end, but I didn't have the willpower to respond.
すまん。気をつけるよ。
何もなかった？怪しい人に監視されてるとか、付け狙われてるとか、そういうのはなかった？
Huh? Mion demanded with a serious expression. I was being criticized for how inconsiderate I had been. Despite being in so much pain, I was frustrated that I was being criticized. But it was my sin. My sin, and I must bear it alone.
何もないよ。でも気をつける。すまん。
Mion, now aware that nothing had happened, heaving a big sigh with her shoulders, looking relieved.
おやおやおや。
おいさん。
おいしい匂いが漂ってくると思ったら。これはぜひご商売に預かりたいですね。
We heard the repulsive voice of a fat man. It was Oi-san, trailed by a handful of police officers. He was acting energetically, in a way unfitting given the situation.
大して残ってないですよ。それでもよければ勝手にどうぞ。
Mion didn't like Oi-san very much. Her cold attitude, though, didn't seem to bother Oi-san in the slightest. It was like splashing water in a frog's face.
ありゃりゃ。味噌汁のお残りってちょっと塩分高めなんですよね。参ったなあ。 君たちはいただきます
He recommended it to his subordinates, but everyone gave dry smiles and refused.
どうですか？警察の方では何か手がかりはつかめましたか？
Irena's smile was warm enough to replace the miso soup.
大丈夫ですよ、お嬢さん。ご安心、ご安心。ちゃんと探してるんですから。
He didn't say a word about having found any new clues. In other words, there had been no progress. That sure was an annoying way of beating around the bush.
それよりも、もう本当に遅い時間です。どうぞ若い皆さんはお帰りになってお休みになってください。体に触りますよ。
True?
そうだよ。ケイちゃんもレナも、今日はもう休みな。あとは税金で働いてるおっさんたちがやってくれるから。
私たちだって税金払ってるんですけどね。蕎麦屋さんが自分の作った蕎麦食ってるみたいな気分ですよ。な。
I really wasn't in a mood for laughter. In fact, Oishi-san was the only one laughing like an idiot.
じゃあ、本当によろしくお願いしますね。帰ろう、ケイチくん。明日が辛くなるよ。
そうです、そうです。なんなら、お二人をお送りしてもいいですよ。くまちゃん、車を回してあげてください。
あ、結構です。俺たち、自転車で来てるんで。
ご安心を。私たち、ワゴン車で来てますから。
Wagon?
自転車も積めますよ。
We may have gotten pretty sleepy, but we just needed to ride home at this point. I didn't want to bother the police like that. Rena, however, nodded.
せっかくだからお世話になろうよ。私たちだけで帰るよりきっと安全だよ。
When I thought about it carefully, I realized that Rena's idea was extremely rational.
そうと決まれば、行きましょう行きましょう。
じゃあね。おやすみ。レナもケイちゃんも。
うん。みーちゃんも早めに休んでね。おやすみ。
I waved my hand as well, saying goodbye. Rika-chan and Sadako still hadn't been found. My unease, however, was steadily being pushed away by sleepiness. Rena showed the police where our bicycles were so that Oi-san could haul them up to their truck. He prompted us to get into the back seat. I could hear the springs squeaking as I sat down on a seat that would normally hurt my rear end, but at this point, it was very soft and was more than comfortable enough for me to fall asleep on.
では、レディーファーストで、お嬢さんの家から行きましょう。住所はどちらです？
ありがとうございます。私の家はですね、
Oh no. We're gonna get interrogated. Rena's voice slowly grew distant. I felt myself being sucked into the void of sleep.
もしもーし、前原さん。完全に眠っちゃってますか？
When I came to, it was quiet. The car was parked. Oi-san was giving me light slaps to the cheek. It didn't feel good at all, so I woke up immediately.
すみません。すっかり寝込んじゃって。
Something was being held right under my nose. A clump of metal? It was a can of coffee.
ぬるいですがね。甘いカフェオレなら常温でも結構飲めますよ。
あ、どうも。
Coffee? I mechanically took the can and opened the pull top. The feeling of the warm, sweet liquid going down my throat awakened my sleepy mind. When my drowsiness receded, I started wanting to know why the car was stopped, and why I was offered coffee. Oi-san, who had been in the driver's seat at some point, or had at some point moved to the back. Suddenly, I had a very bad feeling about this. It reminded me of the questioning yesterday at the library. It was already too late by the time I realized I'd made a mistake. Today of all days, it didn't look like I would be getting away. I had a feeling that until Oisan had heard what he wanted to, he wouldn't be letting me go.
そんなに構えられても困ります。別に取って食おうってわけじゃないんですから。前原さん。
Oisan gulped the last of his coffee, then stretched wide, showing me how relaxed he was. That, however, only served to heighten my nervousness.
俺に、また何の用ですか？
よう。いえいえ、別に別に。
You're going to evade you're going to evade the question at this point? What a deeply unreadable man.
私からは用はないんですが、前原さんから私に用があるんじゃないかと思いましてね。
別に、用なんかないです。
ありゃ、本当にあるんじゃないですか？
There was only one side door in the back seat of this truck. In other words, my only exit was blocked by Oisan. I couldn't get away. I could only limply hang my head and maintain my silence. Oisan, despite my reticence, relaxed and began smoking a cigarette. The cries of the insects outside seemed to be growing longer and longer, to an amount of time that almost seemed infinite.
前原さんから相談したいことがきっとあったと思ってたんですけどね。
Oisan exhaled a puff of smoke. The windows were open, but the tobacco smoke still accumulated inside the vehicle. How much did Oisan know? What did he know, and what did he want to hear from me? If finding out the truth made you disappear, then if I told him, would Oisan disappear too? I had a feeling that I didn't need to worry about that in this case.
どうしてこんなことになっちゃったんでしょうね。
Oisan addressed me in a low tone as if he was talking to himself. How all this ended up happening? How the hell should I know? That was what I wanted to know.
富武二郎さんと高野美代さん、ご存知ですよね。お祭りの時、園崎紫音さんを含めて4人で一緒におられたのを私がこの目で拝見してますから。その富武さんと高野さん、今どうしておられるかご存知ですか？実はお亡くなりになってましてね。気の毒な死に方でした。
Oisan probably played that card in order to surprise me. However, I already knew and didn't display the extreme reaction he expected.
おや？
You already
ひょっと
knew?
してご存知でした？
Unfortunately for this question in particular, remaining silent was equivalent to saying
じゃ
yes.
あこっちもご存知かな。富武さんと高野さんがたたりに遭われた理由の方です。なんでもですね、入っちゃいけない禁断の建物に入ったからだって言われてるんですよ。
The storehouse for ritual implements. That forbidden shed sealing away Hinamizawa's blood-stained past. Where the mistake that started it all happened.
村長さんや古出里香さんもそのせいでたたりに遭われたんだという噂はご存知で？
That would mean it was mine and Shion's fault. He was right. As soon as we revealed what we did.
西宮殿って言いましたっけ？あそこの鍵を簡易なものに付け替えたから賊に入られたんだっていうケチがついてるらしいんですよ。
Right. I'm gonna assume that he's gonna say that they were gonna blame Rika-chan for that. And because the two, strangers got in, and Rika was the one that requested the change, quote unquote, that's what resulted in the secrets getting out. This was news to me.
一昨年くらいまでは 西宮殿にはでっかい缶抜きとでっかい錠前がいくつもつけられていたらしいんですよ。ところがほら、神主夫妻がお亡くなりになられて、今はフルでリカさんが切り盛りされてるでしょ。缶抜きが重くて大変だから、もっと軽い簡単な錠前に付け替えてほしいと村長さんに相談したらしいんですよ。
I didn't know anything about those big bars he was talking about, but the lock had recently been a simple one. It was a pretty cheap one too, and it didn't really fit my impression of what a lock for a place you'd store something as important as ritual implements would look like.
リカさんはあの通り、小が錆びついて重くなった缶抜きはしんどかったんでしょうな。で、村長さんが職人を手配して簡単な南京錠で鍵ができるように付け替えたんだそうです。
それがどうしてケチがつくことになるんですか？
つまりですね、前の厳重な錠前なら賊には忍び込まれなかった。村長さんとリカさんが勝手に安っぽい鍵に変えたから賊に破られたんだと、こういう話らしいんですよ。
そんな話。
そういう話がまかり通ってて、一部の村人たちが西宮殿に忍び込んだ賊と賊に破られるような鍵に変えた村長とリカさんを罰したんだなんて話があったりなかったりしてるんですよ。相原さん、どう思います？
Right, so it's exactly what I just said.
どう思うって、その一部の村人ってのもよくわからないし。
御三家ってご存知ですかな？渡流しのお祭りの開会式典で各家の代表がそれぞれ挨拶をなさってるでしょう。
祭りには途中から来たからよくは。
御三家ってのはひなみ沢の旧家の3つの家のことなんです。具体的に言うと、君吉家、園崎家、古出家の3つのことです。本当に古い家筋らしくてね、大昔から村の決め事は御三家が合議して決めるんだと言われてます。
Kimiyoshi family. Old man Kimiyoshi meaning the mayor's family. Sonozaki family was, well, Mion's. So the Furude family was Rika-chan's family then.
園崎家が戦後に一気に勢力を拡大しましてね、例のダム闘争で反ダムの旗頭になってからは事実上ひなみ沢を牛耳るトップに躍り出ました。でもですね、古いしきたりに従い今でも重要な村の方針は御三家で合議して決めているんだそうです。だから渡流しの開会挨拶も御三家の当主がそれぞれなさるんですよ。つまり村長と園崎家の現当主のおばあ様、そして古出家の最後の一人、リカさんです。
園崎家が大した家柄だという話は聞かされてたけど、リカちゃんの家もそういう旧家だったのか。
まあご存知の通り親族は全くおられませんから、古出家は事実上全く勢力を持ちませんがね。ただリカさん個人には求心力があるようで、村のお年寄りには盲信する方が多いと聞いています。
It was certainly true that Rika-chan had an odd sort of charisma amongst the elderly.
で、その御三家ってのが何だって言うんですか？
Oisan paused for emphasis, lighting another cigarette.
ここまで説明してもまだ説明が足りませんかね。
わからないから聞いてるんです。
Oisan gave me a dry, meaningful grin and blew out another big puff of smoke.
御三家の人間が相次いで消されてるんです。どういうわけかね。ひなみ沢の内側の古い飲酒か何かに基づいているんじゃないかと読んでいるんですが。
そんなの俺にだってさっぱりです。です
から君吉家、古出家の当主が消えたんですから、 次は園崎家の当主が消えるんじゃないかななんて思ったり思わなかったりしたりする今日この頃、いかがお過ごしでしょうか。なんちゃって。
園崎家の当主って、誰だよ。
当主は園崎本家のおばあちゃんなんですが、実質上の当主権限はもう孫娘のミヨンさんに移行していると見て間違いないでしょうね。
The visage of Mion giving prompt directions to the adults while searching for Rika-chan sprung back to mind.
ミヨンが消える？
I hadn't even thought of that possibility. All of my hair stood on end. That's insane.
嫌でしょ？
当たり前だ！そんなの許せるものか！
Oi-san grabbed my shoulders with both hands.
では協力を、前原さん。園崎ミヨンさんについて最近気づいたことを何でもいいから話してください。
I was going along with him? By the time I had realized it was too late. Oi-san brought his face in closer, almost close enough to ram into me, waiting for my next words. This pressure. I can't tear my eyes away from this, or from his. That moment, I heard a beeping sound. I was in the driver's seat. He ignored it at first, but then it started to bother him, so he finally let go of me and leaned into the driver's
もし
seat.
もーし。はいはい、神戸良子。
I was saved. Of course, it's not like I could use this opening to
そ
escape.
うですね。はいはい。では戻りましょう。はいはい。はいはい。
Apparently, he was being recalled. Now that I knew I'd been freed, the tension in my body dissipated all at
そろ
once.
そろ戻らないといけないみたいです。これからがいいところだったんですが、残念ですね。
So hold on. Oi-san flung open the door and exited and walked around to the front of the driver's seat. He left the door open. Did that mean I could leave?
前原さんは友達思いの今時関心な若者です。
In the far-off year of 1983.
友人のことを警察に喋ると、なんだか裏切っているような気持ちになるのをよくわかっていますよ。前原さん、一晩差し上げますから、ゆっくりお休みになってよく考えてくださいね。前原さんのほんのちょっとの勇気が結局大勢の友人を救うことにつながるかもしれないのです。
Did he want to say that the sacrifices would stop with Rika-chan and Satoko?
わかってると思いますが、綿流し以降、毎晩何かが起こります。これまでは毎年1回だったたたりが、今年は連日。本当に景気のいい年です。
そんなの景気がいいなんて言いません。
おととい、昨日、そして今日。明日の晩も起こらないなんて保証、どこにもありませんよ。それを未然に防ぐのが私たちの仕事ですが、それには前原さんの協力が不可欠なんです。
Jeez. I accidentally scrolled for a moment. I'll just reread it. So night before last night, and now today. There's no proof that something won't happen tomorrow night as well. It's our job to prevent such things before they happen. But for that, we need your cooperation. I looked out the open door to see none other than my own house right in front of me. It creeped me out that he already knew my name and address, but I was too sleepy right now. I was too sleepy to care.
まあ、今日はもう眠いでしょう。もう3時になりますからね。どうぞごゆっくりお休みになってください。
はい。では、失礼します。
When I was about to get out of the truck, as if to deliver a parting blow, Oi-san said in a raised voice,
私、前原さんが話す気になってくれるまで、毎日来ちゃいますからね。 取り調べ室で自白を強要っての、もう時代じゃないと思いますんで。
I couldn't say anything in response, but me slamming the door shut probably served the same purpose. Don't forget your bike. After lightly beeping the horn, Oisan's truck drove off. I went to the front door without waving goodbye. The door was locked, but the chain wasn't up. I unlocked the door and entered. Then walked over to the staircase. That was where I lost consciousness. Oh man. That's the end of the chapter, I think. It is. Weird. We normally don't get, like, a middle of the night chapter like this. It's usually, you know, a whole day for a chapter. Like, you know, all of Monday into Monday night, and then the chapter's over. Alright, let's view the new tips. So, from the scrapbook 9. The Sonozaki family. The one to drastically expand its influence after the war was the Sonozaki family. The leader at the time was Oryu Sonosuke, who still has that seat today. Oryu Sonosuke has grown old, and today you can only really catch a glimpse of who she was at the time. From what I've been told, however, she was a leader extolled as the best in history. Having become so old, aside from going out a few times a week for lessons, she spends her time at home in solitude, and seems to leave most of the ceremonial affairs to her heir, Mion. There are different views on why the successor was not her daughter, but her granddaughter, Mion, but it's rumored that it has to do with disownment of her daughter and son-in-law. The uninhibited granddaughter, Mion Sonosuke, still shows no sign of the dignity required of the next leader. However, she does have Sonosuke blood in her veins and is permitted the name of demon, or ogre, I guess. She still doubtlessly requires caution and is probably hiding her fangs and claws as skillfully as the leaders of the past did. Huh? Interesting. Alright. So, the elder leader of the Sonosuke family.
はい。郵便局員も目撃してないそうです。園崎本家は郵便受けにハンコが吊るしてあるそうで、書き留めも宅配便も勝手にハンコをして投函していいことになってるんだそうっす。
そりゃ不用心ですね。ってことは、最後の目撃はいつになるんです？
綿流しの開会式でした挨拶が最後です。その後すぐに帰宅したらしいっすから。
恒例ですからね。話じゃ、週に何回かお稽古事で外出してるそうじゃないですか。そっちはどうです？
毎週月曜に集会所で大正事を習ってるんですが、今週は休んだそうです。
欠席の電話とかは？それを誰かが確認したとかは？
いえ、誰も。ただ、たまに休むことがあったらしいので、誰も不審には思わなかったようです。
明日さ、10時くらいになったら市役所のふりして電話してみましょうかね。在宅を確認してみてください。
10時ですね。了解っす。
Ever since it started to seem more and more like ancient Hinamizuan traditions had something to do with all this, he'd been keeping a careful eye on the three families. At this point, the leader of the Kimiyoshi family and the leader of the Furude family had disappeared. There was only one leader left. Oryu Sonosuke, the leader of the Sonosuke family. She was apparently a pretty old woman. Her dignity hasn't waned, but she still only appeared before people rarely, so it was difficult to confirm where she was at any given time. She, the last leader, hadn't been seen since the day of the Watanagashi. Was she still alive and well within the Sonosuke main house? Or had she...
園崎美音が言うには、体調を崩して寝込んでるんだそうです。
本当に寝込んでるのかな。 顔と脈を見てみたいですね。
まったくっす。
The two of them breathed out a big puff of cigarette smoke.
おいさん。園崎本家と古出神社の捜査令状、申請通ると思います？
Oisan didn't respond, exhaled another cloud of tobacco smoke, his surroundings now as foggy as his mind. Interesting. Yeah, because if Mion is the next heir, then she would quote-unquote be next, right? Right, 2 more. So from the scrapbook 10. The Hidden Ogre. The inhabitants of Hinamizawa believe that the blood of ogres flow in their blood. As such, the character for... I'm gonna assume this is the character for ogre. I'm gonna double check. Because it's usually that. It's usually ogre and... Or, well, it's oni, right? So let me just make sure. Managing. Yeah, it is the character for Oni, which can mean either, again, it can mean either demon, ogre, or daemon, right? But if you just look at ogre, like, that's the only kanji you use for ogre, right? Which is why I'm more inclined to call it that, instead of using the word demon, at least with Japanese. But anyway. For example, usage of the character Oni in names is apparently a right reserved for only the leaders of the Kimiyoshi and Sonosuke families. Case in point, we can see it in the current Sonosuke family leader's name, Oryu. Sorry, we can see it in the current Sonosuke family leader's name, Oryu, is written with the character that which does use the Oni kanji for the left one. This, and only this, is proof that she is a legitimate leader of the Sonosuke family. In the same way Mion Sonosuke, its successor, contains Oni in her name, with Mi being written as, well, that. Is that the kanji for forest? Does Mion's name mean, like, ogre forest? I'll look into that later. It also goes for Oryu's daughter and Mion's mother, Akane, who did not succeed her. It's known that before the disowning, Akane's name was actually written as so-and-so, though it was changed afterwards to that, which still means Akane. So it's still Akane, just like written differently. Let me make sure with this one. Okay. Sorry, I was just checking a few things. Incidentally, it's thought that the first character, the mayor... Kichiro's name, originally meant demon, which can also be read as ki. It should be said that names using the character Oni aren't limited only to the successors of the Sonosuke family. You can even find it in the last names of the 3 families. For example, the characters for Kimiyoshi are likely a split-up version of Oni if you write it in reverse, and the top and bottom as, well, Oni, right? It clearly resembles the character Oni. And it's true. Yeah, because if you put them together, there they are. And you can see it, right? As for the Furude family, who have been in the Shinto priesthood for generations, the word for fortune teller can be written without interval characters as those. I think that with the addition of of a demon's horn or an ogre's horn, the tick on the top of the character Oni, this became that character that is used in their name now. Interesting. In the case of the Sonosuke family, where Sonosuke is written as so-and-so, I can't find any reference to the character Oni, perhaps because it's already ingrained into their first names. Interesting. Huh. They were the clan responsible for running the Watanagashi ceremony, so I think that instead they include the content of that ceremony into their last name. The Zaki in Sonosuke is a conjugation of the word slice, and the sono, written as so, probably contains the hidden meaning of human body, as it is a complicated mess, organs enclosed by 4 sides. Huh. I think, in other words, that Sonosuke comes from those who slice open the gut. Interesting. Oh man, like, like linguistics is so cool. Anyway. Yeah, it's all Japanese wordplay. Alright, the final one. Request denied. This is probably for the search warrants that we asked for. Or that, Oishi-san was asking for.
どうです?何か手がかりはありました?
The officers shook their heads in disappointment. Exhaustion was plainly showing on everyone's faces. That was only natural. None of them had gotten a wink of sleep since the day of the Watanagashi.
課長、若い子から交代で仮眠取らせてあげてください。ここからは長丁場になりますからね。無理せず、体を休めながらのんびり行きましょう。
みんなには交代で休めって言ってるんだけどね。みんな遠慮してなかなか休んでくれないんだよ。お石さんからも言ってくれないか。
ありゃありゃ。みんな遠慮しないでいいんですよ。小宮山君、若い子から順に交代で休ませてあげてください。
小宮山さん、そうしてあげてください。
After the chief told him as well, Komiyama-san left his seat.
で課長、例の請求なんですけど、まだダメそうです。
第一、村人の噂だけなんでしょ?もっと具体的な証拠がなければ難しいよ。
その証拠があの中に詰まってるかもしれないんですよ。
その証拠が中に詰まっているという証拠が必要なんだよ。
True?
課長、なぞなぞやってるんじゃないんですよ。死んだ2人を含む4人が渡流しの晩に西宮殿と呼ばれる禁断の蔵に無断で入り込み、それを何者かが見ていた。ここまでは信頼できる情報なんです。
情報と言ったってあくまでも噂だよ。証拠があるわけじゃない。
そりゃまあ、4人が放火無理して忍び込む写真はありませんがね。とにかく、4人は西宮殿の中で何かを見たんです。消されるくらいの何かを。
消されるくらいの何か?それは何だい?
That's why I'm asking for a warrant to go looking for it in the first place.
その崎家絡みの暴力団関係が有力候補ですな。拳銃の山か密造工場か。その崎家の隠し資産ってのも捨てがたいあたりです。
大石さん、気持ちはわかるけど、あの西宮殿ってのは古出神社にある神聖な建物で、地元の人間への相当な配慮が必要な建物なんだよ。
I heard that there was an hour-long call made from Congressman Sonosuke to the big man. Chief, we have nailed you back down.
とにかく、相当の証拠がない限り、西宮殿の捜査令状は取れないよ。園崎本家への令状も同じだ。特に、園崎本家への捜査は、四課と県警の傍体が絡んでる。入念な事前調整がいるんだ。
調整がいるってんなら、私直接乗り込んで、つけてきてもいいですよ。四課、傍体は三階さん。隣の雀荘で話した方が早そうなメンツですね。
Oh no, a mahjong table of all things?
課長にお客様です。うわ、
Pushing the employee who guided him in right out of the way, an old man who looked like a Yakuza member, given his crested kimono and hakama. Did he not get enough of this over the phone?
わしは議員の園崎じゃ。責任者を出さんか。はよせい。どうも。私が課長の高杉でございます。お前の名刺なぞいらんわ。お前なんぞいつだって官職に飛ばせるんじゃぞ。それにお前だけでは足らん。大石とかいう男も呼ばんか。神聖な古出神社に捜査令状なんぞを請求しよった罰当たり者じゃ。申し訳ございません。大石はただいま捜査に出ておりまして、なかなか連絡がつきにくく、私が代わって受けたまわりますので、どうぞおかけください。
The chief's eyes were telling me to get out of here. Perhaps I'll gratefully accept this favor. Maybe I'll go lay down in a nap room.
よいか。古手神社はそもそも公暦2600年に次ぐ2500年の歴史を有する神聖にして犯すべからずの聖地なのじゃ。八百万の神々とお社様と先祖の霊を祀り、日が昇りてから沈むまで、月が昇りてから沈むまで、ひなみ沢を見守る尊い神社なのじゃ。それを土足で踏みにじろうというバカがいる。そもそも信仰の自由は憲法で定められた国民の最も尊い権利であろうが、こんなものは断じて許せんぞ。聞いておるのか、大竹が。わしを怒らせてただで済むと思わん方がいいぞ。
Man, that guy was really fucking pissed.